You're listening to Rookie Pirate Radio, the official anime and manga podcast for InBetweenDrafts.com. I'm John O'Gurney.
And I'm Travis Hymas.
And today we're doing a manga recap of One Piece chapter 1120 titled Atlas. And Travis, I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, I have the better audio quality at last.
I'll mess it up somehow, though. I promise.
So yes, I do sound, of course, like I'm calling in as a long-time listener, first-time caller, and that is because I am on the East Coast and I am visiting my family. And all I brought with me were these fancy-pantsy AirPods, so that's what's happening.
The important thing is that you're here, John. That's what the listeners want.
Travis, you're the real host. I mean, I'm just going to sound like that deranged caller who just doesn't know how to quit. And on that note, as usual, we're going to be discussing spoilers for the One Piece manga up until this point. So if you have not yet read chapter 1120, be sure to do so now for free on the Viz website or the Shonen Jump app, linked in the show notes as always. And remember, all new One Piece chapters are available to read for free up to 3 weeks after their official release. Or, you know what? Just subscribe to Shonen Jump, then you can read every chapter of One Piece, including the new ones, all the time, anytime. Travis and I are subscribers. We recommend it. We don't get paid to say any of that. We just genuinely recommend it. So there you go. Now, Travis, speaking of time zones, being out here on the East Coast where I don't belong, it is one of those things where it opens my eyes up to the wonder of travel. You can go far and wide to find people, different walks of life. You know what I mean? And then have conversations with them about the various facets of pop culture, including One Piece and movies and TV. But I feel like I'm going to get back home and I'm going to start to miss it. I'm going to start to feel like, wow, that was kind of nice that I had, that chance when I did to connect with other people who don't live in my bubble.
Yeah, it's a real shame that the only way to do that is to get on a plane and go to the other side of your country instead of some sort of like convenient electronic way to communicate with other One Piece fans and with us, the host of this podcast.
Well, Travis, I mean, technically you could join our Discord and all your dreams would come true, but unfortunately that's considered lame.
Yeah, is it not cool now?
It's cool.
The kids don't think it's cool.
I mean, if they did, then yes, of course, they could join the Discord, and then we wouldn't need to spend all this money on airline tickets and risk our lives with Boeing. Just joking. But
yeah, just kidding. What if we were to put this podcast audio with like some Subway Surfers footage? Would it be cool again?
You know what, Travis? I think you're onto something. I think that maybe we could workshop something like that. You know what? Maybe if we told the listeners, the only way this thing can be hip, rad, and with it is if they join the Discord, right?
Oh, yeah.
Our listeners are the coolest people we know.
Exactly. They make it cool by being there.
Well, Travis, maybe that's our hint to be cool and move along with this bit. And of course, obviously, if you're just like, guys, you're never going to sell me on the Discord. It's never going to happen. At least not yet. Well, first of all, never say never. Second of all, of course, if you have our email, don't forget about it. RookiePirateRadio@gmail.com. Oh, Travis, can you say it? Sometimes I get too fast.
Yeah, I'll say it for you the second time. RookiePirateRadio@gmail.com. Don't
forget to call your parents. And Travis, speaking of that, I appreciate that you said it at least twice during your interview, of course, with Brianna Lawrence last week. That was very kind of you. I didn't have to as you predicted.
Yeah, I didn't want any notes, at least about that.
Now, I'm not going to lie. If we get into this recap, I'm going to be a little bit lazier than usual because again, I'm traveling and I'm visiting family and stuff. And B, I do have the coronavirus. I tested positive literally the second day I got here. What are you going to do? It's Florida. Everybody listening is like, well, yeah, what were you thinking? But then here I am. And so I'm going to be a little bit lazy with this. I'm just going to read the recap off of the wiki because there aren't any rules, Travis. And I'm still going to paraphrase. I'm still going to put in a little zhuzh.
Here's what I have to say about that. If John doesn't go to Florida, then that's not really in the pirating spirit, because why would he go somewhere that someone tells him he can't go?
It is a
Coronavirus isn't
new
going to
world,
stop him.
Travis. It's not grand,
Filled with
but it's a new
danger.
world. Yeah, yeah. And I'm not going to whine or wano. We're just going to move on to this chapter recap. So let's do it. All right. Starting, of course, we said the name of the chapter, of course, already, Atlas. And if the death flags weren't there already, right? As soon as I saw the name of this, I was like, well, that's that, isn't it?
Another win for us.
Right. Win. That's something to call it. So we get another continuation of the cover story with Ogre Child, Yamato's Golden Harvest Surrogate Pilgrimage, but this is volume 10. And those kids that were throwing things at Yamato, our boss, fortunately, Denjiro showed up and is punishing the children, maybe a little too harshly by putting them in a net. But sure, it's just nice to see Kiyoshiro, Denjiro, our guy, hanging out, not taking a nap.
Yeah, he looks great. He looks happy for once. It is kind of interesting. Some people observed that it's interesting that it's Denjiro that Yamato meets here after being attacked by these kids who don't like Kaido, because Denjiro, as a kind of a double agent, he's more responsible than Yamato for whatever they dealt with, right? At least in terms of like enablement, because Yamato at no point was complicit, right? And Denjiro had a point. This isn't going to be like me getting on a soapbox or anything, but it is nice to see this character kind of be the person that tells Yamato that it's okay. It's just going to kind of be like this. It's good to see that.
Yeah, they basically used to be coworkers. All right, yeah. So on to the recap. So we cut to about 26 years ago on the island of Punk Hazard. So this is before, of course, all the nonsense between Akainu and Kuzan. This is, decades before all that stuff went down. So Punk Hazard looks way different. And we see Clover, of all people. Clover, who's been referenced a few times this arc because of his connection to Ohara. He had this very fateful meeting with Dr. Vegapunk. He was asking Vegapunk to help him study the Boy Century with him and his colleagues. And so Dr. Vegapunk, unfortunately, refused to help him. He's like, I'm in the world government now. Who cares? And he also tries to warn Clover that, you've been arrested a bunch of times. You've only made it this long because the world government essentially is waiting you out so we can eliminate you and everybody, not just Clover, but everyone who is an accomplice. So we kind of see at this point that, Vegapunk was a bit of a coward. We of course have seen hints of that already, but we know ultimately from this arc that Vegapunk inherited Clover's research himself. And the reason all this stuff is happening is because Dr. Vegapunk went on to would you say inherit the will of Clover? Travis, is that enough? Is that good to say?
I mean, you could say that hypothetically if there was some sort of other will-related reveal on perhaps the next page.
Yeah, why not just Dr. Vegapunk? Why does D have to be in the middle? I don't know.
All right.
Did we ever find out Vegapunk's first name? Has that ever been revealed and I'm forgetting?
No, not to. I'm sure someone is going to correct us. Now I have to check, but I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
I'm pretty sure as well. At least not in. I'm looking at the wiki for Vegapunk, and I'm not seeing a full name, so it's not looking super likely. But anyway, maybe we'll get that later, and then it will be revealed that he has D. Vega Dr. Punk. But anyway, so back to Clover and all that stuff. Clover tells Vegapunk that he had this kind of situation where his older brother had the D in his name. And this is where you find out Clover's full name. Now, there's been a little bit of a back and forth with the Viz translation of this and the initial Roz. I think that the initial Roz were hinting at kind of this Irish name that was like Climb D. Clover is Clover's full name. But then the Viz translation said, no, it's Clu or Clo D. Clover. So kind of like Cloud Clover, which I guess is more of, it's a twirl on that Sunday. I don't totally understand how this happened because the Raws aren't as clear about this as you might suspect. And so I do wonder if it's something that Oda kind of wanted to make sure was translated correctly. So yeah, it's a weird one.
Yeah. I think the fact that his name is Clover and, he's got that physical characteristic, I think does kind of point you in a direction too when translating. So that may have an influence on it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. But anyway, So we find out that Clover himself was kind of like Vegapunk. He lied, about being associated with this stuff, and that's how he was able to survive. But at this point, he says that he cannot accept a world where people die just because of their name. And we find out that that's the motivation behind Clover trying to find out the truth of the Void Century. It ends up being that he wants to understand the secret of the D. He's just like a regular One Piece fan. He might as well be on Reddit if he was alive.
You could say he was the original One Piece theorist.
There you go. 26 years ago. I mean, that's not far off from this whole thing started. So anyway, Vegapunk says he can't help him, but he promises to keep Clover's secret and wishes him luck. And Clover says he's going to solve the mystery of the world someday. And then we cut to 4 years after that, so 22 years ago, when Vegapunk hears about the Buster Call that destroyed Ohara and, of course, Clover and all of them. We actually see Caesar Clown at this point, a young Caesar Clown, being thrilled about this because he says, this is a warning, for people to not study the Void Century. Vegapunk visits the ruined island later, and of course he's really sad about this. He asks Clover why didn't he escape? How come he wasn't able to do this? And that seems to pique Vegapunk's curiosity once and for all to follow through with this research. And so this is around, I think, the time then that he has that conversation with Dragon that we saw earlier in the arc.
Yeah, literally minutes before, it looks like, because Dragon hasn't encountered him yet there, but it is kind of an interesting, I guess, coda here for Vegapunk to be his curiosity piqued not necessarily by the history, but why someone would be driven this far. That's very interesting.
Of course, we can't see any of that conversation with Dragon because this is the part of the arc where Dragon literally says nothing but ... in every single panel. But anyway.
Of course.
Yeah, I've resigned to that. He's just not going to talk or have a reaction beyond that. But anyway, so where was I? Oh, yes. Okay. So we go to the present at this point, and Vegapunk's big message is continuing. He's quoting what Clover told him about the voices of the past being heard. He says that history is written by the winners, while the losers disappear without a trace. But the echoes of those voices were finally able to reach to the rest of the world despite the sacrifices made. He's waxing very poetic, Dr. Vegapunk, at this point. We then cut to the Thousand Sunnies. So if you remember, that was flying off, or trying to fly off, but it was hitting a little bit of a snag. And that is the fact that Noshjuro isn't letting them leave. Zoro is trying to hold them off still, and he's telling them to go ahead and take off. But Lilith says that they cannot. It looks like that Noshjuro is going to be able to stop the ship. Even if he interferes a little bit, it's going to basically doom them. The ship won't make it to sea. But then Atlas flies in and knocks Lilith out and cuts off her connection to Punk Records. This makes York think that she just died. So the idea here is that, we've seen it happen with Edison. And I guess the idea is that Atlas understands that they're going to be able to track down any of the Vegapunks who are connected to Punk Records. And so they have to sever that connection. It hasn't fully been explained. It's been kind of sort of like, if you die, that cuts it off. But Atlas apparently was able to sever it without killing Lilith, which to me just feels like very convenient. I'm a little bit like, oh, okay, that thing that it feels like it came out of nowhere for convenience to the plot. And so it's a little sloppy. I'm not going to lie to you, Travis. I don't like to be negative when it's not warranted, but
I feel like we're going to have a lot of nitpicks here. This one doesn't bug me as much just because, they're robots, technically. It would make sense that there's some sort of physical way to do this. It may be something that they could recall. I'm going to be real with you. The first time I read this, I thought that Atlas broke her neck for some reason to do it. So, it's kind of like, maybe this is just like a Hail Mary attempt. I'm not sure. Make it look like she died. That's kind of how it works. But Atlas was able to do it, and we know York was able to do it. I believe you and I are both going to have a theory about who else might have done it. So, sure. Everybody knows the trick. Cool.
Yeah. Nitpick is right. I think I agree with that characterization there. But anyway, so Atlas then asks the Straw Hats to take care of Lilith while she goes to stop Noshjuro. She flies straight at him, grabs him, loses her arm in the process, or one of her arms, flies away as the Thousand Sunny uses the coup de burst, takes off into the sky. So at that point, we go down to the ground level, to the sea, we should say, where Luffy is very excited to see Emmett. He, of course, was thrilled that there's a giant robot in front of him before. Emmett is also very happy to see Luffy, calls him Joy Boy, as you expected. And he actually gets kind of annoyed when Luffy is like, Joy Boy, what's a Joy Boy? Yeah, so Luffy still doesn't, he doesn't know any of this. Emmett tells Luffy to go ahead and leave and that he's going to hold off the rest of the Gorosei trying to stop them. That includes Mercury and Jupiter. And at this point, they're realizing that the only way to stop Dapper Vegapunk's message is that they have to completely destroy the robot. They have to totally eliminate Emmett. At this point, the Giants then ask Luffy if Emmett is on their side. And of course, Luffy tells him, yeah, like Luffy kind of trusts him immediately, classic Luffy. And so also nobody else heard Emmett speak. So that was another thing you and I definitely were saying seems to be the case, that Emmett is using the voice of all things, or it's similar to like Zunisha and all that stuff, that Luffy is hearing him through that. That was definitely the big implication from last week. Was that last week or the week before? I don't know. Time's a construct.
We had a break in between, but yes.
We did. Yes. I can't keep track. But so everybody else is sort of like, oh, you heard the robot speak? That's weird. Only Luffy heard him. So then Jupiter makes a move and tries to attack Emmett. Emmett sticks out his arm. It looks like he's about to fire off some kind of attack, but he fails and Jupiter chomps his arm while Saturn jumps off his back onto the giant ship and trying to get to everyone there. Right as that happens, Sanji notices that the Thousand Sunny is flying through the air and it's heading right down toward them. And Nesujuro is still being held by Atlas and asks Atlas if she's really going to do this. Like, she's really going to, sacrifice herself, for just this. I guess like the implication being that like, it's not going to do anything, like Nesujuro is not going to be harmed, but Atlas is pulling a pager out, essentially. Atlas then explodes, saying that she is performing a service, and that's it for Atlas. Flowers for Atlas. The crew sees this happen, of course, is very upset about it. York is super excited. She thinks that she's the only Vegapunk left. And then Emmett makes a comment about how he's become a bit rusty over the centuries, and he decides to use what Joy Boy told him to save for the right moment. I should also say, it looks like he doesn't have one of his arms anymore, so whatever he's about to do could be pretty massive. Then the chapter ends with Dr. Vegapunk saying that he has run out of time to continue studying the past. He mentions that Roger, Goldie Roger, our boy, he says his full name, which confuses people because that's still not total public knowledge coming out of Marineford and Sabari and all that, that his full name is Goldie Roger, not Gold Roger, and that the Roger pirates were able to hear the purest voices of the past. So again, reiterating that the Roger crew knows all of this stuff already. It's looking like we're heading to this point, Travis, where Vegapunk is going to kick off another race for the One Piece. I think we can very much expect that he's going to bring up the One Piece again, like before this broadcast totally ends, and say that like, and if you want to find out what Roger did, that's the only way, is that you have to find the One Piece. And then blah, blah, blah. The world is going to be this or that. So that's the chapter.
Yeah. So the end is a great place to begin with kind of that setup. I think you're right. I think it's going to be something along the lines of whoever does claim the One Piece will get to decide what history is. Something along those lines. That seems to be set up here by the winners, right? So the One Piece, I think he's going to tie the Void Century directly to the One Piece, which we, of course, have already done, but the world, not so much, right? We've talked about before that we have the four emperors all kind of like starting to gear up to hit the gas, start really doing this, but the government, the Navy, there's not really a motivation for them to specifically go seek this out. In fact, there's never been a reason for them to go seek this out. It seems pretty obvious at this point that somehow it just didn't occur to them that might be tied to the Void Century, that he wasn't just talking about treasure. In fact, that might be the answer as to why Roger did what he did, why the crew has done what they've done. Vegapunk seems very kind of frustrated that they know all this information and didn't do anything with it. Of course, we know also that there's timing involved here that Roger missed or was too early for. So it's very possible that the entire point of this was to obscure the truth of the One Piece enough to keep the world government from being too vested in tracking it down. There's of course the idea that the government already knows where it is, but that begs a lot of questions that the beginning of the chapter does absolutely nothing to help answer and only aggravates, because that's kind of, I think, the most controversial part of of all of this was the big kind of reveal of Clover's name, not because of Clover specifically, but because of the context.
Yeah. The main complaint too, that I've been seeing for this chapter has been, where's the new information? Right? Like, a lot of this is just sort of reiterating stuff that we already knew. Down to, like, we know that the robot was waiting to do something. Okay, there's like a little bit of a morsel there that it's like maybe an attack or something, but like, it's not that much new information. And then in regards to like the Roger Pirates knowing this, Goldie Roger, like, Clover, and, reading into the Void Century, it just felt like we were, I don't know, like, didn't get like a very satisfying revelation. But I chalk that up personally to us being super spoiled, because that's what One Piece used to always be like. Just because it hasn't been like that lately.
Yeah, so people are mad for two reasons. Number one is we're getting close to the end of the arc, and we know how this always goes when you're a week-to-week person. The end of the arcs tend to get a little draggy because we got to build to the climax and everything and pay off everything. And so we're all ready to leave. We're all like, let's go to the next island. And it doesn't help that we all kind of know where we're going, and we're all very excited about where that place is. So the readers are antsy. They want to get going. And it's week to week. And things kind of take a minute to get there. There's also the fact that, unlike other series, One Piece seems to not necessarily be swerving entirely. Which is to say, we have pieced a lot of this together. But there is a lot less of this that has ever been written down so cohesively before. Like, all of these disparate parts coming together in this arc, they've been confirming a lot of things for us. But they're not things that were actually confirmed. There's, of course, the difference between the audience knowledge and the character knowledge. The characters learning this information is going to be what incites the rest of this saga. It has to be done. We can't just pretend it's not there. Like, Luffy's heard the word now, right? Like, the name Joy Boy is now something that he is aware of. That is big. I have personally questioned when that was going to happen for a really long time, because it's something that has to eventually be discussed with him, right? Like, somebody is going, probably Robin, is going to have to sit him down and explain this to him. And he's probably not going to care, but eventually it has to happen, right? Like, or at least the conversation about him not caring has to happen.
Yeah.
So just because we know all this,
I could see someone try to explain it to Luffy in a very complicated way, and he'd be like, what? Who cares? And then somebody says it in a very goofy, childish way, and he's like, oh, Joy Boy likes to give people food? I love that.
I like that. It would be I like that about that guy. Yeah, it will probably be something along those lines, to be honest, because that's funny. But it still needs to happen. And people will be like, well, that's dumb. We already knew this stuff. Well, Luffy didn't. Robin didn't know this stuff, right? She's learned a ton. And we've been really spoiled in Egghead because there's been a bunch of things that we didn't know getting confirmed. We've had not one, but two characters literally deliver us information in the exact same form as a One Piece theory thread on Reddit, like complete with the string and all of it. Like, it's happening so fast. So I understand a little bit of frustration that, like, now that we're here, now that the pieces have all been put together and everything, it feels a little bit anticlimactic. That being said, we did learn things. They weren't lore things, but they are interesting things. And that's what I kind of want to focus in on. So they were killing people with the D name.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they stop?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. that's the thing. I was thinking about that, right? And it's
That's
like,
been on my mind the whole time. What's up with that?
well, how do we know they really stopped when it seems
Mm.
like they had like a when it seems like they have like an exception for Garp that could be for a very specific reason that they need him. But aside from Garp,
It could be a deal. He like maybe that's why he's such a military man.
yeah, I mean, I think we know that Luffy was a big secret, right? We know that Dragon didn't want them to know about him. Garp is the only one we know for sure who was like allowed to like have the name. And I think it's
Well,
a
there
matter
was. Well, I was going to say there's
of,
Saul. Saul was also a military person, right?
that's something I'm still curious about. Did they know? You know, like, yeah, because
Ooh,
Saul is like the only other one, huh?
ooh.
Because
Way to flip that back on me. We know he was. Did they? Ooh, that's an
I don't
idea.
know for sure if they did. So these are the characters with D's in their names that are confirmed at this point. Roxy Zebek, now Cloudy Clover, Trafalgar D. Law, or sorry, Trafalgar D. Water Law, Views of Christ, Marshall D.T., Shagward D. Saul. The Nefertaris pretty much are confirmed. So Vivi, Cobra, Lily, Luffy, of course, Monkey D. Dragon, Monkey D. Garp, and then Ace, Portgas the Ace, and Goldie Roger. Not that many characters. And so the only two where you're kind of like, well, the government tolerates them are both Marines. And again, yeah, I think that it's possible that they just didn't know. But then also there's another theory that you could form, which is that they became more lax with people with D in their names after the One Piece was found by the Roger Pirates. Because that's the only thing that's happened in 26 years that I think would be relevant, right? That would
Yeah,
change
yeah. It's
the kind of like
so
strict stance on it.
yeah because you have because even if you factor in, you know, Luffy was kept secret. The second, based on what Clover is saying here, right? The second Luffy had a wanted poster, that should have been it, right? That should have been the game. They should have sent all manner of, you know, resources after him, not just the normal resources, but like the same. It looks like in the flashback here, obviously they're silhouetted, but it looks like it's Cypher Pole. If they had sent Cypher Pole after Luffy post East Blue, game over. Like, let's be real. So why not that? Now, Occam's Razor, because we're at this point of the story and not that point of the story, so everything's different now. But this is one of those times where, like, that's a huge inconsistency. And there's no way that Oda hasn't thought about that, so that's why I feel like there has to be an answer here, right? There's something we're not completely seeing.
Yeah, I mean, another explanation could potentially be that when Cloudy Clover or whatever was killed, it's not just any Marine has an issue or has a directive to do this. It could be that it's a very specific cipher pole or world government
Yeah.
thing of like they just found somebody who happened to have D in the name. Not that they were hunting them, but that they found out that somebody was like a historian and had D in their name. And so they were like, oh, like you need to die because like the D clan associated with this. Whereas like it's not something that they're like, oh, it's not like Order 66. We have to eliminate all people with the D in their name. Just sort of like that's a signal that you're trouble and it's a reason for us to execute you. You just happen to cross paths with us or something.
That makes sense. It's possible that that's it. And of course, when it comes to pirates too, they're always moving around and stuff. So it's, you know, kind of up in the air, you know, how much effort they can actually commit to doing any of this. What do you think too about the kind of like loose idea that we got earlier in this arc that the D isn't necessarily like a name in the normal sense, like a birth name or a given name, but like some sort of title we kind of saw implied with Lily and Emu. Like, how does that factor into this? Are we just kind of over that idea now, or do you still have interest in that?
I mean, there's so many theories about the will of D, right? I mean, one thing that I've always swirled around in my little wine glass has had to do with the way that names work in different countries. how some people have two last names, and how there are some countries where you don't get a middle name because it's seen as sort of unnecessary or disrespectful to the mother. And there's some cultures where your middle name is your father's name. I don't know. I forget exactly how it works, but like there are all kinds of weird things with middle names. And I think that in some cases it can be a moniker. So it's a reference to you've been marked by something, and it's supposed to be like your kind of your designation, as it were. So I just feel like the D stuff, it's never felt airtight to me. I've never found any kind of explanation for it that really feels good. My favorite stuff has always been that it's not the letter, that it's the symbol. I've always liked that,
Yeah.
playing around like that. It's a poneglyph. We've talked about that where it's like a poneglyph letter. So it's like hieroglyphics. So that would bring it back to the Nefertaris because of their connection to Egypt.
Mhm.
Right. And so something having to do with Lily, like if there was some kind of revelation that it all started with Lily, I think that'd be really cool. Because that would genuinely bring this all full circle. No pun intended, because the D is a half circle.
Yeah, and I'm jumping back to that now because we've been talking about it a little bit, and I'm looking at the panel where Emu actually answers the question of, what is the D? And to your point earlier about something changing in an amount of time, he says, the D is the name of those who once opposed us. Those who bubble up from every corner of the world bearing the D are nothing but empty husks, ignorant of the meaning of their name. So to your point, whatever the answer is, it looks like it does in fact have something to do with specifically seeking that purpose versus, what Luffy is doing up until this point. I'm just trying
Sabo.
to piece it together. Yeah, Sad
Does
Debo.
Sabo get to be a D?
Yeah, I mean that's what's interesting, right? Because it's paired with this same revelation, right? That like he tells him, you can be a D if you want. You could be sad boy, right? Like is that it? Or is it just kind of a extra layer to this situation? Or even is it just a dumb flashback to use the fact that Sabo has had this on his mind before? I don't know. It is truly the greatest mystery in this entire manga. So, I mean, we're not going to get the answer to it from here, but I'm fascinated.
I've long liked the idea that the D is as simple as this, going back to the symbol thing, like it's a smile.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely believe that Oda was drawing Luffy and noticed that he was drawing the smile like a turned D and put that in his name. And then later on came up with a way to sort of like make it a big lore thing and tie it to the One Piece.
I think it was Grand Line Theory said in one of their videos about this chapter about somebody's theory. I think it was the Luffy time traveler theory. Is that's a really dumb idea, and One Piece is a really dumb series, so a lot of times that actually ends up working out. Like, it could really be that simple. And symbols matter, right?
Dies, right?
Yeah, it's how
Roger dies with the D smile on his face.
That's how they properly die. And notably, Clover does not die with a smile because, as far as we know, because he was hiding it, right? That tracks.
I don't remember. I definitely don't remember.
I looked it up. We don't see his face when he's actually shot, but we do see his face right before, and he's not. So, but he was hiding it, so that actually kind of tracks. Versus Saul, who was, at the very least to us, known as a D, and he is smiling. So that's interesting.
And there are other characters like Odin who died with a smile.
Yeah. So maybe it really is just an inherited will thing. And yeah, maybe there's just more symbolism to it. Again, it's the greatest mystery, right? But it does. I do think that this has to have some kind of answer because this is where you get a little bit past nitpicky and being like, okay, but if the government was sending Cypher Pole agents to kill Ds like that, there's a lot of them running around for this to not be a thing. Law was hiding it and Clover was hiding it, but Luffy's not. Teach is not. They let Teach join the Seven Warlords. Like, what's that about? Like, again, Emu says it's not a big deal, so that's got to be the answer. But what changed in 26 years?
Somebody found the One Piece.
The One Piece, yeah. Maybe that's it. Maybe they do know where it is.
Yeah. And they're just sort of like, well, somebody found it, and then we're still here. I don't know.
What if they took it? What? Okay, here we go. Tinfoil hat time. What if it's not on Laugh Tale anymore?
I got moved.
What if it's been moved?
Well, that would be a real Patrick Star kind of move, but I mean, where would they put it? Lodestar?
I mean, Mary Joa makes the Mary Joa sounds like not the Roger Pirates moved it. I think
I know.
If somebody moved it, like, because again, if they had any sneaking suspicion whatsoever that like Roger found something this important, yes, they executed him and everything, but like they didn't execute him on the spot like Clover, right? They did a whole big thing.
They would have been able to find Laugh Tale though, because they didn't have the road pond list.
Well, so that's the question. Do they know where it is kind of where I'm coming back to. If this is something that's existed in the same spot, more on that. But if it's in the same spot and we have literal people who were alive during there, then that doesn't matter. So did they go get it after finding out somebody found it and it was no longer safe?
I don't think so.
Because the government... the government told them not to go to the final alley.
Did they not know the island existed before?
That's the problem here. That by itself is the core of finding out that Emu exists, if I'm being entirely honest with you. Because Emu existing, and existing presumably as the same person that he has been for 800 years, them, whatever, how does that fit? How does that fit into any of this? Because it's a great reveal. It helps give us a face to punch at the end of this story. But if the story is literally supposed to end with the discovery of the One Piece, Emu doesn't make sense. Because they would theoretically know what it is. And if they don't know what it is, why haven't they gone out of their way to stop it? If Roger was basically told by the government, do not go to the final island, why? Because the One Piece is there. But why would they tell them not to do that if they didn't know the One Piece was there? Why has the One Piece been allowed to lead to this big piracy thing? Of course, we need the big villain to explain his big dumb villain plan, but just that's the deal. Like, that's why Emu just throws a wrench into all of this. Like, yeah, you have the esoteric symbolism. Maybe they're the sea devil. Maybe they made the devil fruits. Maybe they betrayed Joy Boy. There's all kinds of different things. But just in the broad strokes of that, why this plan for 800 years? Why hide in the shadows? Why all the subterfuge? Why this system? Why propagate the celestial dragon system? Why anything? It's just so... Again, it invites the nitpicky, and then it just gets really kind of frustrating.
I think the only way it really works is that you chalk it up to the five elders and Emu want absolute control. But the point of the story is that the more you try to seek out that control, the less of it you have. And that the more and more the world will rise up to try to seize it back. Same way that Mother Nature will rebel against you when you try to control and understand it. Twisters coming to theaters this weekend. And I think this is a case where something about Laugh Tale and the One Piece is a natural disaster. It's something that is completely outside of their control, and it wipes out their hubris in the same way that the pirates are something they desperately want to control, but I think part of them realize that they'll never fully be able to keep all these things in check. If anything, they just have to sort of manage the chaos to be a little chaotic within their control and handle what they can. I think they're stretched thin in a lot of those ways. And I think there is something maybe that the Roger Pirates did that kind of messed everything up for them and completely shifted their priorities and what's going to happen next. I think that the world sinking, even, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something that was triggered by Roger, either knowingly or unknowingly, when they showed up too early. I know that the common line of thinking is that the world is going to sink And the way to stop it is the One Piece, but the Roger Pirate showed up too early, and so they're trying to usher the next generation, right? That's a common line of thinking. It makes lots of sense. But also, like, I like the idea that the Roger Pirates did something that maybe kind of, I don't know, kickstarted this, that they were too early, but that doesn't mean they didn't do anything. It doesn't mean, like, yes, ushering the pirate era and all that, but something had to make him King of the Pirates beyond finishing the Grand Line.
They're too early for Roger's taste, right? Because Roger wanted to see it. He wanted to be in that era. He wanted to see what was going to happen, but he wasn't going to. And he was never going to because he was sick, right? We know that. So maybe you're right. Maybe they are also just part of the plan. But that just kind of, lends credence to like theories like that the One Piece has moved, or that it's in an inaccessible location, that it's not just an island, but it's the moon, or it's in the sky somewhere, it's underwater somewhere, it's secretly been Fishman Island the whole time. Like
God Valley.
We could speculate all day. Yeah, now we're just Windmill Village, Syrup Village.
Where's Gaiman again?
Yeah, that one place with all the boxes. It was secretly there the whole time. Could you imagine?
It was in that treasure chest. They just didn't check the corner.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Could you imagine? Speaking of anticlimax,
that's why you always have to go back in the dungeon. Sorry, that's why you always have to go back in the dungeons and check you got everything.
Yeah, you got to check every box, even if it's a mimic, right? Like, you do it free run style. You just got to roll them dice.
Yep.
But speaking of those kind of anticlimactic funny things happening, how like, I kind of love that after all of the buildup, it turns out that this robot is just a stand-up comedian. That's great.
Elaborate?
I mean, that's his bit. He's funny. Emmett is funny.
Emmett's funny?
Yeah, that's the bit. So he's doing like a manzai thing at the beginning when he's talking with Luffy, and Luffy's like, huh? And he's like, I'm talking to you. It doesn't work as much with the robot face, but like, it's just like all those other scenes of like Zoro or somebody else in the crew, like about to slap Luffy upside the head for not paying attention. Yeah. And then he goes to do the cool, like, Frankie style move and just peters out. And he's like, kind of like an incontinence joke because he's old. Like, of course.
He has a personality.
It's a giant clown. Of course it is. This whole time we're like, yeah, it's a robot clown. That's exactly what he is. And it makes perfect sense. I didn't consider that notion whatsoever until it happened, but it makes perfect sense. Oh, yeah, no, he's funny. It's a bunch of gags. Of course it is. Because
didn't we already talk
he's
about
a Joy Boy sycophant.
So yeah, if he was part of Joy Boy's crew or a Joy Boy ally or whatever. And didn't we talk about the idea that like Toki might have sent him forward, but then, and that's like she sent him forward to save Joy Boy or whatever, and that was what happened 200 years ago or 400 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah, we had floated the idea that like something to that line was the plan, like he was programmed to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I still like that idea, by the way. I think that's really cool because then this inevitable self-destruction that's about to happen next week will feel really, really cathartic. Like it'll be closure for Emmett. That's nice to see. But I mean, if it is, we're going to have to flash back to at least that next week, right? Like we're going to need that at this point to make that hit. Otherwise, it is just going to feel really anticlimactic for a lot of people.
Here's another theory I don't have a basis for. So Toki sends Joy Boy. I know. So Toki sends Joy Boy and Emmett forward, but she sends Joy Boy a little bit sooner than Emmett because it's a different time. And then she sends Emmett, and then Emmett shows up and to try to save Joy Boy, but then Joy Boy tells him like, "Oh no, the plan has changed." And so all the stuff about him being captured and Mary Joa and the hat and everything. That's when Emmett finds out like, "Oh, I gotta wait another 200 years. Toki messed up, sent me too soon." And there you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, no basis, but it sounds One Piece, doesn't it?
It does. Because again, it's funny. Because it would be funny if like they were wrong like unintentionally. Like this, like it's a tragedy, but there's kind of laughter in the tragedy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. We got to send you forward enough in time so that Emu will be dead. Oh no, Emu's not dead. Emu managed to become a yokai overlord and doesn't age, so we have to change the plan. Now we're gonna do this instead. Remember Lily, she and those phonoglyphs. What are you gonna do? We're gonna go with Lily's plan. She was right all along. Let's do that.
Well, it could be too that like Lily, you know, wasn't like a double agent, but like changed sides, right? And so that plan didn't exist at the time. That also works.
Lily, didn't she take the pawpaw fruit and warp all the poneglyphs? She sure did. And you're never gonna believe what she did with that island we used to hang out at. That island? We can't go there for another 200 years. Oh, well, you can't go there, but another Joy Boy can.
Yeah, do it like a tide thing or something, right?
The tides. Yes, yes. You need 4 poneglyphs. Just like how the world government has 4 little circles. I don't know.
Yeah, something
Wait,
like
I guess
that,
it's
right?
5.
Yeah, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, I still think that
COVID John doesn't have any F. Travis.
does not have any. But like, I still like that idea because I think that that's a good that's a good motivator for Emmett versus some of the other potential like allies we've seen, like Zunesha, where Emmett really was just trying his darndest right up till the final moments and then just shut down and waited. And so now he gets like this final moment to say goodbye and like fight for Joy Boy, and he's so full of joy himself that he gets to do that. That's really nice. So if that's how it works, like again, there's kind of like a joy in the tragedy, like hiding out there, which is a really good like microcosm of One Piece, right? So I don't want to discount the idea, at least until next week. I kind of hope we get like a really, really brief tease of like what he was thinking this whole time, because we have that incident 200 years ago that I would love some context on, just something to chew on, like a, you know, I don't want a full flashback, but like a panel or two would be cool. We seem to be sliding those in here now. What's one more? Yeah, we'll see.
Here's what I don't get, though. Here's what I don't get.
Okay.
Because the robot runs into Luffy and it's like, Joy Boy, oh, it's so nice to see you. Hey, Joy Boy, it's so great. I get to fight for you again. I get to protect you. But Luffy doesn't look like a fish man. How can he make that mistake?
Because he's got the awakened fruit. I don't know what to make of this. This is where people started throwing out the time traveling Luffy theory again, where like if there's a devil fruit that goes forward, maybe there's a devil fruit that goes back. And so that's what that's the secret reveal, is that Luffy is Joy Boy and always has been, which is just an evolution of the old like Luffy is Roger theory that existed long before Toki did. So introducing that devil fruit sure didn't help that agenda. But I think it's just the fruit. I don't want Occam's it to fruit. Be anything else. Yeah, Occam's fruit. I don't.
Orchard's razor.
Yeah, because Oda's orchard, right? Because like that's what the Giants recognized, right? The Giants didn't recognize Luffy as the sun god when they met him the first time. They recognized him in the awakened fruit form. Like that is the key delineation. Same with Vegapunk, right? The only person who looked at Luffy and said that guy could be Nika is Kuma, and that's what sets Kuma apart from everybody else, right? So I don't think it's more complicated than that, which is me kind of saying, no, they could still be a fishman. That's technically still possible as much as any other race in One Piece, because I don't think they had to look the same. That's kind of silly and dumb, unless it is literally Luffy time traveling and creating a paradox or something. But like, One Piece is dumb, so sometimes that's what happens. But yeah, I don't think it's like, oh, you Monkey D. Luffy look exactly like Joy Boy. It's, hey, Monkey D. Luffy, your powers look like Joy Boy now. You have the hair. Because his hair does change. It doesn't just turn white. It changes shape. It changes the way that it flows and sits on his head. Right? So that, I think, is more important than, he looks like Joy Boy. it probably doesn't take much to look like Nika. I mean, it's not exactly a complicated cosplay. We saw Bonnie do it a couple weeks ago.
I've seen enough cosplay on Reddit to know.
Yeah.
People can dress up.
Your agenda is still out there, my friend. It's still valid.
I'm not giving up. Not giving up. So we've had a lot of laughs tonight. A lot of things have been shared. It hasn't been too contentious. And
No.
I mean, I will say there's been contention in the Discord. Don't forget to sign up about Lilith being the next Straw Hat instead of Bonnie. And the whole thing with Atlas is very sad. It is a Pedro moment. I don't like Lilith for Straw Hat, to be personally honest. But if anything, Lilith to me is best when paired up with Edison. And I don't want to accept that Edison is totally dead. And maybe this is like the anime agenda, because in the anime they have their little let's learn, about at Punk Records bit at the end of the episodes that One Piece stole from Demon Slayer. And I don't know. Lilith is Straw Hat.
Edison alive is still something that I kind of want to commit to, because he's the one we haven't seen die. So we've seen all the others either be incapacitated, be York, or die. So Edison not being dead on panel, this is one I've got to see. Yeah, I got to see a body. I got to see a robot body just like collapsed, because
I gotta see a body, says Travis.
I gotta see a corpse. It's comic book rules. You gotta see a corpse. But I mean, if to your point at the very beginning of this discussion, if all of them just could hit a switch in the back of their heads and disconnect from Punk Records, there is no reason that Edison didn't. There's no reason, because if he stayed connected, then York could just go, "Hey, they're extending the clouds out and gonna shoot the shit over." Like, it's the same thing, right? Like, I feel like it's more likely that's what happened. Now, that doesn't mean that Edison survives. I just don't think Edison is down for the count yet. I think that this may be a thing where, like, a very wounded Edison maybe survives and is just kind of in that broken state until he can reconnect with Lilith. I think it was Hippo said that Edison gets a cover story next time. Something like that, because he's the one we don't know for sure.
And then Stussy.
Yeah, Stussy is still out there. Stussy needs a friend now. Stussy does need a friend. She got turned away.
I can see Lilith groveling with the Straw Hats, being their resident Vegapunk.
It's a carrot situation, right? Because it would help. It would help if we do have if we have a Vegapunk who can, at the very least, be there, like when they reconnect with Saul and kind of link the O'Hara stuff to Egghead directly and kind of pick up that story thread.
Fulfill Vegapunk's dream of like connecting the world.
Right. And York's not going to be that. So I guess in that respect, I guess it does make sense. That's a W.
That is a W for us, because I remember I gave the theory that we're going to have 2 Vegapunks total, and one would be the good Vegapunk and the bad Vegapunk.
Yeah, and
but
it's just kind of funny.
Twisting it a little.
Well, yeah, it is kind of funny though, because if it's the gluttony one going to the bad side, right? Meanwhile, the aspect of evil is on a pirate ship, which is perceived as evil. That's kind of fun.
There you go.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah. I mentioned this in the Discord too, that I think that the nice potential with Lilith is she has the bubble gun, and that's such a great move against power users that would come in super handy against Blackbeard, his crew.
Yeah.
So the idea of Usopp and Nami who already uses bubbles, and Usopp, who we know is very good at like incorporating other weapons into his arsenal. I think like them getting like tech upgrades from a Vegapunk would be huge, and a little in Frankie, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great point. Like, I think a lot of people went into this expecting some kind of upgrade, because like Zoro kind of got a power up in Wano. Sanji has had multiple power-ups over the past few arcs. Luffy, of course, had a power-up. We have Jinbei joining, which kind of shifts the balance of power in the DC universe. The usual stuff. But we haven't really had an Usopp upgrade in particular since Dressrosa in the form of
observation hockey.
Yeah, and Nami got Zeus, which is technically an upgrade, but it's more like an enhancement. So, like, something giving her a new arsenal is definitely, I think, handy, especially because they're the members of the crew who either don't have like a special bloodline trait or devil fruit powers at this point. So, trying to even the score on them. And again, I'm the kind of person who's like, not every single Straw Hat needs to be in every single fight, but I think it would be good to do that, to take those characters and Frankie, because the fact that Frankie just hasn't gotten a chance to shine at all in the arc with Vegapunk just kind of feels like a bummer to me, until there were some combat stuff. He's gotten some stuff, but we didn't get any conversations. We didn't get comparing notes. I would have loved to see Stella see the Thousand Sunny and everything that Frankie has done with it. That would have been a really cool thing to have. We didn't really have time with it. If Lilith's on the ship, maybe that's the time for it. Maybe we would just jump the gun a little bit, the bubble gun, even.
The Straw Hats
if you might
have a scientist on the crew, and look, and I've mentioned this. I'm down for a truce. We get 2 Straw Hats in this arc, all right, and he's lobby style, and so we get Lilith and we get Bonnie. At that point, we would have 4 women on the crew. It'd be way more balanced than it was before in terms of like the diversity of like the Straw Hats and their different personalities and traits and all of that. One of them, and would be not a power user. We would have somebody who's like, resourceful, but not like a powerhouse, which would be fun.
Yeah, and then when Vivi comes back, it'll be an even balance across the genders.
And then Yamato.
To eliminate gender forever.
And then Carrot.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and then we bring everybody back, right?
And then Law.
Yeah, we have good old Law. I wonder what the plan for Law is, because I mean, he's still got to be in the game, right? Because we had the Beppo scene, like reacting to things, so he's not down and out, but like, where does he go from here, I wonder?
Yeah, he has to go on a rehabilitation tour or something.
Yeah,
I'd like to see him go to Elbaf.
Yeah, for just like, that. I mean, it's possible. It's closest island. I kind of feel bad for the rest of his crew, but yeah, they need a safe place, like him specifically, because that fight did not go super well.
We do need a character to kind of warn Luffy, right? Of like, hey, Blackbeard is no joke. Like, he wiped us out, and without even like his whole crew there. And this is what they're capable of. And like Luffy getting a little bit of a wake up call, like, oh yeah, I got to deal with that guy.
Well, it's one of those things, right, where they've warned him before and he's kind of like blown it off and it turned out to be a bad idea. It could be that situation again where like they kind of plant the seeds of it and Luffy kind of doesn't take it seriously at first, or gets too cocky and he's like, nah, I could beat me, or I can beat him. And then like we get the situation like stuff you were hinting at before where like maybe he has to fight without his devil fruit. It's either neutralized, stolen. I mean, so many options for that.
Or maybe, maybe Law runs into Shanks because, on the way to Elbaf, and the 2 of them, maybe Shanks is just sort of like, hey, join my crew. And Law looks around and is like, that's fine.
I mean, yeah, that's an interesting idea. The first
the
power
doctor?
User.
Yeah. Who's the doctor on Shanks' crew? I couldn't tell you.
That's a great question.
And
I couldn't tell you.
Of course, I don't think Law will ever join another crew. I think he's too My Chemical Romance,
He's had one alliance too many.
He's not okay.
He's not okay. He's not okay. Oh, that's wonderful.
We're not okay because we're
not okay.
We're past time and we didn't get to any of the comments, and I feel pretty bad about that.
We will blame COVID. And definitely not me going on a tirade.
We'll blame York, because it's always a good idea to blame York for something. And shout out to the anime, which has been actually handled the York reveal pretty well. York is way more sinister and menacing in the animation compared to the manga, and I'm digging it quite a lot. I'm about to watch the episode where Shanks gives Kid the what for. And
it's so good.
To see that. I've heard that he pulls a Naruto, or a Sasuke rather, and so I'm ready for that. And yeah, until then though, we will be back next week because we have a new chapter 1121. I haven't got any Ross for that this week. I don't know if I will, so I might just be reading the English translation when that comes along. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe to Rookie Pirate Radio on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like podcast stuff. And if you would like to not only email the show and join the Discord, but if you'd like to comment on the show, you can do that on Spotify as well. You can go to Spotify, rate the show. Please rate the show anywhere you see an option, Spotify or Apple Podcast, wherever. Really helps us out. And we'll see you all later. Tally ho. I don't know if I can stay my term.